When a team loses its star player, one of two things happen. Option 1, the team self-implodes. Everybody is lost. The head of the snake is gone, so the body falls. Question marks come. People's jobs are in question. Losing the boss on the floor and in the locker rooms means all progress is halted. Or option 2 happens, where guys step up. A new version of the team starts to form. Players that were once cast-offs or mislabeled immediately look like real options and pieces that you can build around. Which way it ends up going? Well, that depends on the team, because every team has a different DNA. I'm your boy Chip Overseas, and today we're gonna get into the Trey Young situation. Trey Young recently went down with a knee injury, and since he's been down, there's been a lot of question marks around his comeback, because the team has found success since he's been down. But before we get into the video, I need you guys to hit that subscribe button right now. We are a smaller page just starting out, and we're trying to get to the 5K mark. So if you guys can help me out with that, I'd really appreciate it. Before we get into the video, I just had to make sure I said that. Now let's skip the boring stuff and get right back to it. So Trey Young has obviously been the cornerstone of the Atlanta Hawks team pretty much since his first year coming into the NBA. There was a lot of controversy around his draft pick because he was famously traded for Luka Doncic on draft night. At the time, Luka was still under the radar and not really an established name within American hoops. And Trey Young was the guy that dominated high school. He dominated college. He was a household name by the time draft night came around. So it was a no-brainer because Luka seemed to be, by some people, not by the people that actually knew, but by the average NBA fan, Luka seemed to be a long shot. You know, he could be Kristaps Porzingis or he could be Darko Milicic. And that's no disrespect to Darko Milicic. I always say on this channel, I played in Spain the time Luka was having his Luka run in Spain as an 18 and 19-year-old, winning MVPs of the EuroLeague and Spanish titles. I was there for that, so I knew the buzz that was around this guy in the European circles, the people that were in the know. But back home, it wasn't really like that. Trey gets on the scene. He struggles in Summer League, right? I remember those times where it looked like he was gonna be a bust. Luka didn't play in Summer League, so he got to dodge that comparison during that time, but eventually it led into the regular season where I want to say he had maybe a half a season worth of poor performances. Meanwhile, Luka hit the ground running. And it was always a running thing between him and Luka. Which one is better? Who made the right choice? I think for the rest of their careers, they both secretly kept that in the back of their minds and used it for motivation in different ways, right? Because if you're Luka, and not to make this video so much about Luka, this is my last Luka point. But if you're Luka, this team didn't believe in me, right? They traded my rights before I was ever given the opportunity to step on an NBA floor. They said that I wasn't good enough. And if you're Trey, every time Luka has a good game, they look at you like, well, he could have been doing that in Atlanta. And meanwhile, we got to look at you. And there's no disrespect to Trey because Trey had big moments, obviously. But that's got to be used as motivation. When you're an elite athlete, you're looking for anything to take you over the top. So Trey Young goes on to have a really good career in Atlanta, being named an all-star in just year 2 in the NBA, all-NBA third team by the time he's 5-6 years in, having big moments within the playoffs. And Trey really became the identity of not only the Atlanta Hawks offense, but the Atlanta Hawks franchise. It was at a time where they were needing to build their program around a star, right? And this young kid, even though he was small in stature, he had a big game. He was not scared of the moment. He was the kind of player that can go into Madison Square Garden, put on a show, shut the crowd up and hit his I'm freezing Selly. That's tough. I think it became pretty evident that he needed a team built around him. If you were gonna have any success in Atlanta, you had to have the good Trey Young players. What does that mean? You need to have a Clint Capella that can go up and get lobs because Trey is one of the best floater/lob throwers, right? You don't know when he gets in the paint if he's gonna throw a floater or if he's gonna turn it around and throw a lob. You need some shooters. You need guys that can pick up the slack defensively, like a Dyson Daniels. That's actually a really good Trey Young player. But what tends to happen, especially because Trey is a smaller guard, you gotta hide him a little bit on defense. You gotta slow the game down because he's more of a methodical kind of player. And this is the first point that I want to get into, that ever since he's been down with injury, the team took a 180. You're no longer playing in half court. Now the lobs are being thrown strictly in transition. They're getting up and down. And to be honest, if you look at the landscape of the NBA, look at the teams that recently won and went to the finals. Those are both teams that are just young, long, athletic, and they play like this in the regular season. And that's not so bad in the NBA because at the end of the day, offense wins games, and not stagnant offense just coming from one creator, one source. So when Trae goes down, a few things happen. Other guys step up. You got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He becomes the number 2 option, where when Trey Young's there, he's more of a number 3. And when you're the number 3 behind a guy, a ball-dominant guard like Trey Young, you really feel more like a 5. Like, I've been in that situation with ball-dominant players. The number 2 feels like a regular number 3 guy. You know, like, look at Jordan and Pippen. Pippen was a number 2 option. When you hear Pippen talk to this day, he still speaks as if he was a number 4 option. So that's what's happening when you're playing with a ball-dominant guard. And now your number 3 guy gets put into the number 2, but a real Robin role. You know, it's not Superman and Lois Lane. It's Batman and Robin. We both have superpowers and we're both sharing offense. And now your number 2 guy, Jalen Johnson, he gets thrown into the number 1 role, and he's not so ball dominant. Jalen Johnson plays an athletic game. He's more of a finisher. Trey Young is more of a creator and finisher, right? Because he's a great playmaker for others, but he got used to taking on such a big offensive role that he just became the entire offense. So now Jalen Johnson is playing lights out basketball. I mean, last year he finished the year pretty strong and ended up averaging about 19 points per game. But this year he's up to 22.3 points per game, 9.6 rebounds, almost 2 steals a game. And that's on less shots attempted. I say a lot of times in the NBA, guys are so talented that it's really about opportunity. There's so many players that if you just give them a green light, they can average over 20 points per game. But it's hard to do that under the guise of you being the number 2 to a ball-dominant guard. And when you take that ball-dominant guard out of the equation, it frees up not only your number 2, but it frees up everybody else. I think the person that probably benefits from Trey Young being out, and I don't want to say benefit because a player going down to injury as a former player, that's not cool saying that it's a good thing, you know, because you don't really want to wish that on players. However, there's opportunity in it for other guys that would not have had that opportunity. And I think the biggest player that had the biggest turnaround is Zachary Rissacher, the former number 1 pick, who I am going to do a video about him in depth and how he became the quietest number 1 overall draft pick in NBA history. When Rissacher got drafted number 1 overall, he brought the qualities that you would think fit perfectly with the Trey Young. He plays off ball and he cuts and he defends and rebounds. He can play 2 through 4. Those are all the great things on paper that fit so well with the Trey Young. But the only problem is when you're drafted number 1 overall, those expectations for you hike up a little bit more. So while he was a fine player doing what he does, you know, getting transition layups and catching backdoor lobs, there was maybe a hope that he would be doing a little bit more, but that wasn't really possible with the way that they were playing. Most of his opportunities would probably come from transition basketball. Not for nothing, Trey Young is not exactly the pushing the pace kind of PG. That's not where his advantage lies. Since Trey Young went down, the Hawks went on an absolute tear, going 8-2 in their last 10 games, bringing their overall to 8-4. There was a great graphic that I found posted on Instagram the other day stating that the Atlanta Hawks are ranked 28th on defense with Trey Young, and they're ranked 2nd on defense without Trey Young. There's a bunch of guys that look like Zachary Rissacher, Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. These are the kind of players that you can switch 1 through 4. You can't switch 1 through 4 with Trey Young. I mean, you can, but he's going to get hunted out. They're just going to go and hunt out the mismatch. And while Trey Young can get it back on offense, that's not a game that a lot of coaches are willing to play, especially in the regular season. Having that big of a turnaround without the best player on the court really does something to a locker room, especially when the players are a little bit younger. Let me explain. Young players, especially in the NBA, I mean, I never played in the NBA, but I can only imagine. I'm speaking from my overseas professional basketball experience. Young players come in with a lot of confidence. It's not always confidence that's expressed. Rarely would you see a young player come into a veteran-led locker room and say, hey man, this is I'm taking over, I'm shooting this, I'm doing that. No. It's more subtle, especially when you got vets around. But when you got a young player coming into a young locker room like the Hawks have, they start to band together, right? They start to hang out in groups and packs, and they start to do their own thing, especially if they got numbers on their side. In practice, they hanging out. They only passing to each other. On the bus, they're only talking to each other, right? What do you think these guys are saying to themselves? We don't need him. The young guys are looking at Trey like, Trey's nice. Trey can get 40. They'll tell anybody Trey can get 40 any given day. But we play better without him. especially guys like corner piece guys like Risasher and Dyson Daniels, because they not from America. The overseas mentality of these players when they're coming over here, nobody's bigger than the program. They're not even used to having like this fanfare around the game and the social media stuff and jersey sales and all that. They're not even used to that. So they're saying to each other, we don't really need him to win. When in reality, maybe they do, because who's going to close games, right? So you do need one of the best closers in the NBA. Now, do you need him to play the big role that he played before? I think they're proving that no, you don't, right? These guys can carry you in the regular season. Just play fast, play big, switch everything, shoot a lot of threes, transition layups. That's the formula for the Hawks winning basketball games. Hey, that's the formula for a lot of teams winning basketball games. And not to mention, Trey Young is still with the team, right? When a player gets injured, we don't see them on the court. So as a fan, you may think that this guy is not really connected. These guys are still connected to the teams. He's seeing the shift happen without him, right? And he's seeing that he's on the outside looking in now. These young guys, now they have their own inside jokes, even though it's only been 10 games. 10 games can be an eternity in basketball world. In basketball land, 3 games without you feels like an eternity, especially if they're winning. I remember having games where I was injured. No lie. Had games when I was injured, and I think every athlete can relate to this, where a game gets close. You're sitting on the bench watching, a game gets close, and you think, if I was in, it wouldn't be this close right now. They're battling. We go up 1, they go up 1, we go up 1, they go up 1. You're thinking, I would have hit that 3 right there. We'd have been up 2. I would have got that stop right there. They wouldn't have scored. We'd have been up 5. Boom, boom, boom. Doing math in your head. Just making stuff up. Then, if you win the close game, your team wins the close game, in the back of your mind, I don't care what level you're at, I don't care how great of a teammate you are, in the back of your mind, you're saying, damn. You almost kind of hope that they struggle a little bit while you're gone, so people can feel your impact. Because if a team goes on a run without you, there's a thing that Bill Simmons, shout out to Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons came up with this thing called the Ewing theory. Shout out to Patrick Ewing. I'm doing a lot of shout outs. I'm doing a lot of pandering right now. I'm usually not this nice, but I'm in a good mood. But shout out to Patrick Ewing, because he is Jamaican. And I did a great piece for him on the NBA socials, and I'll tag that in the comments. The Ewing theory that Bill Simmons coined the term of states that once a star player leaves a team, the rest of the team bands together. That camaraderie, that sharing the ball, that team spirit, morale starts to rise, and the team actually plays better when the star player is on the bench. And this is the typical Ewing theory thing going on with Trae now. The team is low-key looking like morale is high, they're having fun, they're running the numbers up, scoring a lot of points, everybody's involved. That's like the brand of basketball that makes everybody happy, right? Obviously, everybody's happy when you're winning, but if you're winning and you had 10, 15 points, you feel a little bit better about the win rather than winning with 6 and Trae ain't passed you the ball in the last 3 plays. He took bad shots and you felt like you could have got a better one. They're still humans at the end of the day. That feeling doesn't feel as good as winning and being involved. Why is this important? Chip overseas, why are you saying that, man? Who cares? There's only 10 games. He'll come back and everything will be fine. Next summer, Trey Young has a $48.9 million player option. So that's a $50 million decision that needs to be made. If you're upper management, how do you assess this? If I was in upper management, I'd be boots on ground. I need to know. I need to feel how the team feels. What's the vibes right now? Are you guys just going on a streak to like prove to us that you guys are worth more than what we're paying you? Is this just like a flash in the pan? Is this just like, can you just sustain this for like 20 games and then you go back to being who you used to be? Because if that's the case, then we need to bring Trae back. Trae got to stay here because he needs to be included with whatever you guys just flashed to us. Or is this something that can be fully sustainable? Is this who Jalen Johnson is? Is this who Alexander Walker? Is this who Risashe? Like, are these who you guys actually are? Did we do a good job developing you guys and getting you guys prepped for this moment? Because if we did, pat yourself on the back. And if that's the case, then what are we going to do with this big old contract? Because we can get some more pieces in here that really takes this thing up a notch. And next thing you know, you're looking at the next Indiana. Atlanta has to just monitor the next 5 to 10. From Trey Young's standpoint, 10 games is an eternity. But from the upper management standpoint, 10 games is not enough to say panic, panic, panic. Hit the panic button. It's a wrap. We need to keep this team as is without Trae. We don't want Trae involved. That era has passed, because once you make that decision, there's no going back. As I said before, if it was me, I'm gonna keep Trae because I need him to close games. But I'm telling him, we're playing the same pace, brother. You ain't playing 37 minutes a game, though. I'm gonna bring you down about 25, 24 a game, because I also need these young guys to get their confidence. I need Jalen to be making decisions with the basketball. I need Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They just signed him to 60, 50 million, whatever it was. I need him to do his thing too. What do you guys think? What does this 10 games mean to you? Is this something that's sustainable by Atlanta? Or are they just showing out because the big dog is not in town anymore and we get to play a little bit freely and we're just playing on a high? If you're a hooper, you know exactly what that feels like. Let me know in the comments what these 10 games meant. And in the meantime, stay tuned for the next video. It's going to drop next Sunday. We're going to take a deep dive into Zaccharie Risacher. So make sure you guys are on the lookout for that video because it's going to be a good one. But until next time, peace.